you might think, well, I didn't want to create this horrible scenario that I'm in, but in reality we know that we don't want those negative things to happen. But it's not whether we want them or not, it's what we are literally You know, when you get those situations where something happens and all of a sudden you start berating yourself, you start thinking, oh, why did I say that? And it gets you into a negative cycle of starting just from that one phrase or one word that may have happened, and you start going through a domino effect of thinking the worst things. And that's what happened to me recently, and I had to stop myself from turning something so simple and turning it into something that may have ended up with me having to find, or in my head, having to find another place to live. The other thing that happened was that my boss told me that she'd got someone to look at our website, and that person knows a lot more than I do about creating websites. Knowing that somebody else who knows more about websites was coming on board really took a knock, because I was scared that that person will probably say things like, oh, this could have been done better, or we can make these changes, and why did you do that? And just my thoughts started rolling into, what if she shows that I'm not good enough, or I'm not as good as I make out to be? It made me start rolling into that sense of, oh, what if she replaces me and I'm going to have to end up being told by the job centre that you've got to start looking for other jobs. And it really scared me. So those are the two things that happened in my life recently that really made me think about my self-worth. If I can't work, it means that I have no income, whereas other people in the situation do have backups and I don't. So I have to put myself first. And I've always had this thing from a very young age that when you're putting your needs first, you're being selfish. And I knew that I have to get over those feelings, because I'm not young anymore. If you're my age, and I am 56, we don't have very long. And having started again in my 50s, I have no backup. I have no one to depend on, and I can't feel guilty for putting my needs first before other people. And it's been quite a journey to learn that I can't please people all the time. So for a few days I spent those days being depressed, ruminating about the most negative scenarios in my head. And I'm sure you've gone through this, that sometimes you just cannot stop yourself from thinking about the worst scenarios. So what stopped that was that I was working one morning and something got triggered in my mind, and I realized that I was sending daggers of emotions to somebody, and that person probably didn't even know how I was feeling, I was thinking. But you know that they say that everything is energy, and I'm sure that person must have felt the negative energy that I was sending without them even doing anything for me to feel those daggers of negative energy towards that person. And the reason that woke me up was that in my previous place the same thing happened, and I didn't know that I was doing it. I wasn't as aware of my feelings and emotions as I am now, and I just kept creating these scenarios in my head. All I could think of was, they're gonna throw me out, and I'm not getting along with this person, and blah 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 blah. And what happened? I created those scenarios in my head, I created those feelings in my body, and what I was dreading happened, and that's how I got to be asked to leave where I was living. So why is it so hard for us to stop ourselves from creating those negative scenarios in our head? Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the fact that the more we continue to feel those feelings or continue to create those scenarios in our head, the easier it is for us to go into automatic situations, because our brain and our nervous system are literally linking together to make it easier for us to create those feelings and thoughts in our minds. It's like when we used to learn the times tables when we were younger. The more we did it, the more automatic it became, and the more we remember it, the easier it is for us to remember those times tables. So I'm sure if I was to ask you 8 times 8, we know it's 64 without even thinking about it, or I hope it's 64. That's how our body makes it so easy to create those negative scenarios and negative feelings. You've probably also found yourself maybe surprised at things that you've been thinking about, whether they're positive or negative. The more you think about them, and all of a sudden you find yourself in that situation. Abraham Hicks talks about the vortex of creation, which basically means that when you think about certain situations over a period of time, you're creating this vortex of energy around you and around the situations. And as you continue to feel the energy or to be in that energy, and I'm sure you've done it, and that's why I had to stop thinking the way I was thinking, because I could literally feel the negativity I was feeling. I didn't realize what I was doing. I know all about energy, and that's why I had to stop myself, because I didn't want to create, although the scenarios are in my head, I didn't want to draw those scenarios into real life, and that's why I had to stop. This is where Abraham Hicks talks about the current reality that we face. It's like, and I like the way that they phrase it, or she phrase it, that it's like gum that you've chewed the life out of, because you're creating all these scenarios in your head, and all of a sudden, without you realizing, those things just come to you. Everything that you see around you is a reflection of what you've been creating in your head, in your mind. And the world is a mental game. You might think, well, I didn't want to create this horrible scenario that I'm in, but in reality, we know that we don't want those negative things to happen. But it's not whether we want them or not, it's what we are literally thinking minute by minute. I knew that I didn't want to create a situation where I would have ended up having to look for another place, and this is why I had to turn things around. I had to stop thinking those negative feelings, and I had to think about life in a positive way. Now, the good thing about being able to change situations is that in the same way that you got to the situation where you are by constantly thinking about it, you have to remember that there's nothing you can do about what's happening now. What's happening now is the result of your previous thoughts, if your previous feelings, of things that you've created in your head. Now, the good thing about that is you don't have to go to those people or to those situations and start changing them. All you have to do is start changing the thoughts in your head. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, believe me. I know, because I've had to do it recently. I asked myself, how would I like this to turn out? I want to be in a happy home. I want everyone to be talking. I want everyone to be civil with each other. I want us to have fun being together and living together. And that's what I had to force myself to start doing, regardless of what was going on, whether I was received nicely or whether I felt that, oh, maybe they're thinking this about me, whereas I'm thinking that they're thinking that about me. And we have to think in that way, that maybe what you're thinking in your head, those people are not even aware you're thinking that thing about them. It's quite a confusing scenario. So that's what I had to start doing. It's like even when you're doing something that you're not aware of, it's one of those subconscious things that you do automatically, or you don't need a brain to do it. So for example, if you're cleaning or brushing your teeth, you know, we all do it. You're brushing your teeth and your physical body is there brushing your teeth. Even if you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're there, but in your mind you're somewhere else. And that's what had to change. That's what I had to be conscious of, is being conscious about what I was thinking, and just as importantly, being conscious of how I was feeling. Another channel called The Shah also talks about situations don't matter, only my state of being matters. And it really helped me to think about how I would like things to be. I know you're probably thinking, well, how can I feel that way, or how can I think that way when things are happening around me? Believe me, it's so hard. But it's like you're reaching for that feeling, for that energy, and the way I describe it is like it's like a little spark that at the beginning it's so hard to reach for. It's just like something that's out there that you just can't grasp, or you just can't feel. But start feeling for it, and it's like a spark. That's what it feels like at the beginning. It feels like you just can't get that feeling. You can't raise it within your body. And I'm doing this because for me it starts off in the chest, but I think part of me feels like it probably starts off in the solar plexus. So it's just that it starts off really faint and subtle to begin with. But the more you practice, the more you start feeling and practicing those feelings, the stronger the feeling gets. Because the more you practice, the stronger your connections get. And the easier it is, the more often that you do it. And that's what I did. And I started imagining other people who, when I was going through the negative phase, I was imagining them hating me or not liking me and just having a negative opinion of me. And that's the other thing that I realized. It's not other people having the negative opinion of me. It's me thinking negative things about myself. And that's the one other thing, that we always think that people don't like us, but we're actually judging ourselves instead of putting the blame on other people judging us. We're actually judging ourselves, and that's a bit of a tough one to swallow or to accept. So that's what I started doing. I was, regardless of when I was in the situation, regardless of that, and I felt negatively, in my head, I changed it to having a positive scenario instead. And you know what? Within a few days, things started changing. And that's how quickly it happens, namely because I felt it in myself that I'm no longer having those prickly feelings. There's a saying, when two people are in a room and they've been arguing and you walk in there, you can literally feel the electricity of anger or negativity when you walk in that room. And that's what happens when you are feeling those feelings. Those energy is coming out of you. Because I was thinking differently, my energy that was coming from me was also different. It was more joyful, it was more relaxed, it was more accepting of myself and others. Seriously, within a few days things had calmed down. Don't get me wrong, my feelings and my thoughts hasn't all of a sudden started being all flowery and, you know, romantic. No, I still have those negative feelings, but I have to be really, really aware and conscious that I am creating those scenarios in my head again. The job has been the same, but because I've been imagining myself feeling more confident, having more prosperity, imagining how I'd like my life to be. And by imagining myself being more successful and feeling more successful, I was inspired to do things that I would never have thought of myself. It's like because I'd come down from the stress of feeling those negative feelings, there's more energy for my body or for my brain to latch on to those inspirational thoughts. And I know that that's because of the result of what I've been doing in my mind and changing my energy level. It's great because you don't have to think things. All these inspirations just come into your head. Let me know in the comments below whether you think it's all a bit too woo-woo or whether it makes sense to you. Try it and let me know how it works for you. And please don't think this is going to be an overnight thing. I have been journaling and I've been practicing for a while, so I think it's slightly easier. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and I'll see you in the next one.